that, like, change the entire game. And that is where you're looking at it and you're like, this is where Caitlin Clark, being Caitlin Clark, is at her best. So, if you guys did not see, we have a game here where the Fever are well in control. A lot of Kelsey Mitchell stuff. The Fever are completely in control here. Like early on, Atlanta had the 6-2 lead. And they had an 8-2 lead, but then injuries, offensive fouls. Suddenly it's a game again. But if you're looking here, the Indiana Fever go into halftime. And they are...
Caitlin Clark didn't just win the game. She dismantled the Dream's entire defensive strategy in a way that left everyone, including coaching legend Stephanie White, absolutely stunned. The momentum had completely evaporated. The Fever were reeling, and then Clark decided to play bully ball against one of the league's most physical defenders. It wasn't just a scoring run. It was a psychological takeover that changed the entire energy of...
This is where Caitlin Clark, being Caitlin Clark, is at her best. So, if you guys did not see, we have a game here where the Fever are well in control. A lot of Kelsey Mitchell stuff. The Fever are completely in control here. Like early on, Atlanta had the 6-2 lead. And they had an 8-2 lead, but then injuries, offensive fouls. Suddenly it's a game again. But if you're looking here, the Indiana Fever go into halftime. And they are up by 9. They then go up by... Or Atlanta hit get an and 1. They then go...
The game started with Kelsey Mitchell putting on an absolute clinic, keeping Indiana afloat while the rest of the engine was still warming up. Mitchell was the undisputed MVP of the first half, hitting shots that seemed statistically impossible, and building a lead that felt safe for the Fever. But as any WNBA fan knows, no lead against a hungry Atlanta team is ever truly secure, especially when the stakes are this high. The Fever went into the locker room up by 9, feeling confident, but the storm was brewing just beneath the surface as the pivotal third quarter approached, with a lot of uncertainty.
And that's one of the better shots Caitlin Clark's hit on a defender that is, again, everyone talks about how Paige can't do anything on Ryan Howard. Ryan Howard even more physical on Caitlin. Caitlin playing bully ball on Ryan. And throughout the game, Caitlin just kept bumping into Ryan. Caitlin has Ryan Howard's number. Like, people are like, oh, no, she doesn't. Ryan Howard's holding Caitlin under averages. Yeah, but Caitlin's 7-1 against Ryan. 7-1. Caitlin has her number. But it's one of those things, again, where you've got that happening. And then all of a sudden, Atlanta hit a couple of shots, and they get the lead. Naz Hillman hits it.
Suddenly, the wheels started coming off the Fever's wagon, as Atlanta found their rhythm and began a ferocious comeback that silenced the Indiana fans. Momentum is a terrifying thing in professional basketball, and the Dream were riding a wave that looked like it would swallow Indiana whole. Turnovers were piling up, shots weren't falling, and the physical pressure from Atlanta was becoming overwhelming for the young roster. It was during this chaotic stretch that the game reached a breaking point, where a leader had to emerge, or the season's hard-earned progress would vanish in an instant.
Like, there's only one player that can hit that behind the back, step back to the left with that much fluidity. Like, and Caitlin's not shooting well on those step backs. She's actually not this year. But you still have to respect it. You absolutely still have to respect it. It's like, we all know Sabrina Ionescu shot 29% from 3 last year. No one's leaving her open. Marina Mabry shot 27% from 3 last year. No one's leaving her open. Like, this isn't a Stewie situation. You absolutely have to you have to respect it, because she can pull this off.
That is when Caitlin Clark decided she had seen enough and took the game into her own hands, with a level of aggression we haven't seen before. While Atlanta was celebrating their newly found lead, Clark snatched a defensive rebound and didn't even look for a secondary pass. She put her head down and sprinted coast to coast, weaving through defenders like they were stationary traffic cones in a practice drill. It was a statement of intent that screamed she wasn't going to let this game slip away, regardless of how much pressure the Atlanta defense tried to apply to her in the paint.
Kelsey Mitchell for a wide open layup. All of a sudden it's a timeout. The Indiana Fever go from completely out of control in this game They've lost all control. All control. And suddenly it's a 6-point game. And it just felt like that swung the game. It did. Anyone watching this game knows that it felt like that is the moment where like that's the moment where the game swung. That is absolutely the moment where the game swung right there. And yes, Kelsey Mitchell, let's not...
People love to talk about how physical Rhyne Howard is and how she supposedly has the blueprint to shut down Clark's perimeter game. But in this matchup, Caitlin flipped the script and started playing bully ball against Howard, initiating contact and refusing to be pushed around. The stats don't lie, and Clark now holds a staggering 7-1 record against Howard, proving that she has her number in the most high-stakes moments. This wasn't just basketball. It was a personal challenge delivered on the biggest stage possible, and Howard had no answer for the rookie's relentless intensity.
The moment where the game swung right there. And yes, Kelsey Mitchell, let's not get it twisted. Like, Kelsey Mitchell going out of her way to to put the team on her back. Like, she was putting a bullshit and it was going in. She was like, fuck all of our offense. She went rogue. People talk about Caitlin going rogue at certain times in the game. Kelsey Mitchell went rogue. Kelsey Mitchell put up some of the worst shots. Kelsey Mitchell put up like four straight possessions of no. Oh, good shot. Like, she put up 4. Like, Kelsey Mitchell shot a step back.
Then came the moment that made every highlight reel in the country, and left the announcers struggling to find the right words to describe it. Clark pulled off a behind-the-back step back to the left, with a level of fluidity that very few players in the world can replicate under that kind of pressure. Even though her shooting percentages on those specific shots have been shaky this season, you absolutely have to respect the gravity she creates. When that ball splashed through the net, the air completely left the building for the Atlanta Dream faithful, who knew the momentum had shifted for good.
Absolutely. Over the course of a 44 game season, the analytics normally add out. The analytics normally even out. That being said, while the analytics normally even out, on an individual game, on a game by game basis, a lot of the time it is individual greatness. A lot of time, individual greatness is what wins you a game. And I'm gonna be real here. This game was won by the individual greatness of two.
The sheer terror Clark instilled in opposing defenses was on full display during a crucial transition play shortly after her scoring burst. As she crossed half court, the entire Atlanta defense focused their eyes and bodies on her, completely losing track of their assignments in the process. Jordan Canada and Rhyne Howard were so preoccupied with Clark's deep-range threat that they left Kelsey Mitchell wide open for an easy layup. It is the kind of gravity that doesn't always show up in the box score, but wins championships by making the game easier for every single teammate on the floor.
She was doing everything, and again, she was getting the rebound, she was pushing the floor. The Indiana Fever has literally been, have been one of the better, Caitlin Clark's at her best when she's getting the rebound. And if Caitlin Clark can get a rebound, the Indiana Fever, I wouldn't be, I don't know the points per possession of Caitlin Clark rebounds, but it has to be above 1. It has to be above 1 point per possession, and noticeably above 1 point per possession when Caitlin Clark, when Caitlin goes and gets the rebound, because everything clicks, everything starts clicking. But anyway,
it wasn't just about her own scoring. It was about how she manipulated the defense to create easy looks for her teammates like Aaliyah Boston. On one specific drive, Clark drew 3 defenders into the paint, creating a narrow window that most guards wouldn't even see, let alone execute a pass-through. She zipped a pass to Boston for an easy finish, reclaiming a lead that had looked lost just minutes prior. This level of floor vision under extreme pressure is exactly why she is considered a generational talent by scouts, coaches, and veteran players all across the professional basketball world. While Clark was the catalyst, we have to talk about Kelsey Mitchell going completely rogue in the best way possible for the Fever's offense. Mitchell started taking shots that would make most coaches pull their hair out, including contested long twos after 11 straight dribbles without a pass. But when you are on a heater like Mitchell was, the analytics go out the window, and you just have to ride the hot hand until it cools off. She was putting the team on her back, hitting difficult shots that broke the spirit of the defense and forced Atlanta to rethink their entire strategy on the fly. This wasn't a game won by a complex system or a perfectly executed playbook. It was a win defined by raw, individual greatness from elite athletes. It was an ugly, gritty affair from start to finish, with both teams trading blows and forcing each other into very uncomfortable positions. When a game becomes a total mud fight, you need players who can transcend the scheme and make plays out of nothing but sheer will. That is exactly what happened as the Fever's core found a way to grind out a victory when things looked bleakest and the pressure was at its absolute maximum for them. One of the most underrated aspects of Clark's game that absolutely demolished Atlanta was her ability to secure key defensive rebounds. Statistically, when Caitlin Clark gets the board herself, the Indiana Fever's offensive efficiency skyrockets to unbelievable levels that other teams can't match. Everything clicks into place because the transition starts immediately, giving the defense zero time to set their shell or double-team her effectively. It is the heartbeat of their fast break offense, and it was pumping at full speed during that legendary third-quarter takeover that changed the game. Coaches like Stephanie White, who have seen it all in this league, were left searching for answers to Clark's sudden and violent shift in play style. Usually, teams expect Clark to hunt for the long ball, but her willingness to drive into the teeth of the defense was a massive curveball. By playing with that level of physical aggression, she forced the officials to make tough calls and forced the defenders to second-guess their positioning. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare that completely disrupted Atlanta's defensive game plan and made them look amateurish at times. You could feel the exact moment the game swung back in Indiana's favor, and it started with a defensive stop by Aaliyah Boston that ignited the bench. Boston came up with a massive block on Angel, which ignited the fast break that Clark orchestrated with surgical precision and speed. Within 2 possessions, a deficit turned into a lead, and a timeout was called by Atlanta in a desperate attempt to stop the bleeding. But the damage was already done, and the Fever had reclaimed the psychological high ground for the remainder of the night, leaving the Dream scrambling for any sort of answer. Critics often point to Clark's lower shooting percentages on step-back threes this year as a sign of regression or poor shot selection by the rookie. However, as opponents have learned the hard way, you can never leave a shooter of that caliber open, regardless of what the season stats say. The threat of the shot is often just as dangerous as the shot itself because it forces defenders to overcommit and leave the paint vulnerable. Clark uses this fear to her advantage, opening up lanes for her teammates that simply wouldn't exist for any other point guard in the league right now. Seeing Caitlin Clark initiate contact and bump into players like Ryan Howard shows a massive evolution in her professional maturity and toughness. Earlier in the season, she might have looked for a whistle or tried to dance around the physicality, but now she is embracing the contact. By bullying the defenders who try to intimidate her, she is sending a clear message to the entire league that the rookie wall doesn't exist for her. This grit is what has allowed her to maintain a winning record against some of the toughest and most respected individual defenders in the WNBA today. The Indiana Fever's execution at the end of quarters has quietly become one of the most dangerous weapons in their entire arsenal this year. Whether it was the trap to end the second quarter or the lockdown defense to close the third, they are playing with a championship-level IQ. Clark was at the center of this, drawing fouls and celebrating with a level of fire that ignited her teammates and the crowd. They aren't just playing hard, they are playing smart when the clock is winding down and the pressure is at its peak, which is a sign of a team that is growing up. We also saw the supporting cast step up in massive ways, including Raven Johnson hitting a dagger off a brilliant sequence from Mitchell's playmaking. It takes a lot of pressure off a superstar when the role players are ready to knock down shots in the most high-pressure moments of the game. This synergy is starting to look less like a collection of individuals and more like a cohesive unit that can compete with anyone. The growth of this roster's chemistry over the last few weeks has been nothing short of a miracle given where they started at the beginning of the season. At one point, it felt like it was just Caitlin Clark versus the entire Atlanta Dream roster, and she was winning the battle single-handedly. She was hitting the threes, making the passes, and grabbing the rebounds in a solo run that reminded everyone why she was the first overall pick. When she plays with that kind of rhythm and confidence, there is no defensive scheme in the world that can truly contain her for 40 minutes. It was a display of pure basketball talent that lived up to every bit of the massive hype that has followed her since her college days. While the analytics usually even out over a 44-game season, this specific game was a reminder that individual greatness can defy any spreadsheet. On paper, some of the shots taken by Mitchell and Clark should have resulted in a loss, but their talent overruled the numbers in the end. This is the X factor that makes the Fever such a dangerous opponent in a potential playoff series where every possession counts. You can't coach against a player who is simply better than the person guarding them, and that was the undeniable story of the night in Atlanta. Once the Fever regained control, their defensive intensity reached a level we haven't seen consistently from them throughout this difficult season. They weren't just content with scoring, they were actively hunting for steals and forcing Atlanta into uncomfortable contested jumpers that had no chance. Clark's defensive contributions are often overlooked by the media, but her effort in the closing minutes was a key factor in securing the win. She was diving for loose balls and staying attached to her mark, proving she is more than just an offensive highlight reel for the fans. The fact that Clark is now 7-1 against the player of Rhyne Howard's caliber is a statistic that should terrify every other team in the league. It shows that even against the so-called Caitlin stoppers, she finds a way to win the games that matter most for her team's standings. This rivalry is quickly becoming one of the most interesting storylines in the WNBA as Howard tries to find a way to break the curse. For now, Clark remains the undisputed queen of this specific matchup, and she isn't showing any signs of slowing down or giving up her crown. As the Fever continue to find their identity, games like this serve as a perfect blueprint for how they can overcome adversity on the road. They didn't have their best stuff for the entire 40 minutes, but they had the right stuff when it mattered the most in the second half. This win against the Dream wasn't just another notch in the win column. It was a statement of resilience for a very young team. They are finally learning how to win ugly, which is the hallmark of any team that expects to make a deep run in the postseason this year. The takeover we witnessed wasn't just a flash in the pan. It was a glimpse into the future of a league being reshaped by Clark's presence. Every time an opponent thinks they have the answer, she asks a new question that they simply aren't prepared to answer on the fly. Whether it is through her scoring, her passing, or her newfound physical edge, she is proving that the hype was only the beginning of something much bigger. The Indiana Fever are no longer just a team to watch for the highlights. They are a team that is finally